Let's talk about bounty hunters, shall we? Bounty hunters.
Interesting topic. Bounty hunters have a pretty fascinating, if sometimes controversial role. What's on your mind about them? Are you thinking about the legal aspects, how they work, or something else?
It's definitely something else, but what do you mean? Let's go into the controversial. How is it that bounty hunters are controversial?
Well, a lot of it comes down to the fact that they're private citizens, not law enforcement. But they often have broad powers to track down and arrest people who skip bail. This can raise questions about constitutional rights, since they aren't subject to the same restrictions as police. And there's potential for abuse, or even getting the wrong person. Some places are trying to regulate them more, but others are considering getting rid of the practice altogether. Does that make sense?
Okay, so no, it doesn't, because you just said sometimes getting the wrong person. The police do that all the time.
That's a fair point. Police make mistakes too. The difference is that bounty hunters operate outside of the official justice system, usually hired by private bail companies to protect their financial interests. Because of that, they don't have the same level of oversight, training, or accountability as police do, meaning there's less protection for people who might be wrongly targeted. Does that distinction make a bit more sense?
No, because police have very little training also.
So you're saying that even though police have some training, it's not enough to make a real difference in terms of accountability? I get that. The idea behind bounty hunters is more about being a part of the private bail system, which critics argue just introduces extra risks with even less official control. Is that what you're getting at?
Listen, the problem is that in general, and I'm not saying this is with everyone, because I am actually friendly with various different police officers in several municipalities all over the United States, in various different places that I've been, and in different countries, specifically China. I know a lot of police officers and security personnel and people that work there. So I'm not but in general, especially in the United States, from experience, police really tend to overstep a lot of boundaries, and there's a lot. I mean, when you mention controversy about bounty hunters, when police, I mean, are you telling me that it's such a weird and kind of a stupid thing to say when the police are, in the United States, police are in general one of the most controversial professions that there ever was.
I hear you, and I get why you're frustrated. You've seen police overstep and definitely feel like the focus on bounty hunters is misplaced when there are bigger issues with law enforcement. Maybe instead of comparing the two, we should think about what kind of regulation and training would make both systems better, and which parts each play in the first place. Would that be something you'd want to discuss?
Well, first of all, in general, like a good focus on de-escalation training, and specifically on personal development and self-awareness type of training for all of these professions, and ongoing, like in the sense that, for example, I have a degree in clinical hypnosis, and there are continuing education units that are required for, if you were certified with, for example, the American Hypnosis Association, and doctors have to do that. Personal trainers even have to get continuing education credits or continuing education units. So anybody dealing with law enforcement and things like that should have ongoing martial arts training, high-level martial arts training, because from personal experience, from being a martial artist for 4 decades, I know for a fact that it comes with it when you practice it and apply it in a certain way, a higher form of self-discipline, calm, and restraint, and also de-escalation skills.
You know, I think that's a really interesting perspective. You're talking about creating a requirement for ongoing training, not just a one-time thing, focusing on self-discipline and managing force. It's similar to how licenses for doctors or therapists require continuing education. That kind of approach, combining de-escalation and physical skills, could definitely move things in a better direction. Is that what you're picturing?
That's not what I'm picturing. That's what I'm saying clearly, because I've already pictured it. I already know. I already understand how it works. And I'm not saying that it's perfect either, because, even as a person who's been practicing martial arts for a very long time, there are people who have upset me, and I have wanted to just forget about de-escalation and take them out with physical force. So I understand that the potential is still there, but there's a lot more restraint when first of all, when you have ongoing martial arts training and you're constantly being, like, when you're working with people who know your weaknesses and can exploit your weaknesses and point them out and help you to build them up and then find more weaknesses, and you're constantly being challenged by coaches and trainers and team members and things like that, and you live in a world where you're not always the biggest and the baddest, and somebody out there will be able to come up and take you out. This becomes, somewhat of an issue, but that getting into confrontation is challenging and can be painful, and so you tend to do your best to stay away from those kind of things.
That's a powerful point. You're describing how continuous martial arts training can build self-control and respect, even when you're feeling challenged or angry. Knowing your own weaknesses and having that constant test against others who can challenge you builds a level of restraint that might be hard to achieve otherwise. It's like a deeper understanding of power and when to use it. It sounds like you believe that continuous training develops a mindset of restraint for everyone in those positions.
It could, but I'm talking more about the fact that when you're constantly training, you know how uncomfortable it is for both parties, because you are on the receiving end of being a winner and a loser, and you understand how challenging, painful, uncomfortable, inconvenient it is to do so, even though you do it voluntarily on a regular basis through ongoing training. It's not something that you want to do when you don't have to. Like if in confrontations out in the street, out in the wild, so to speak, you already know how uncomfortable it is already on the mat. So there's no reason, if you can de-escalate, you're going to want to do that, because it's just ridiculous to be to be having confrontations in the street unless absolutely necessary, which sometimes, and there have been times when it's been absolutely necessary, literally, because I've had people back me into a corner where I could go nowhere else and they were continuing to be aggressive, so I had to stop them. But in general, you don't want to do that at all.
You're saying that the constant training makes it clear that confrontation isn't something to seek out, precisely because of how difficult and unpleasant it is, even when it's controlled. The discipline you develop through martial arts actually pushes you to de-escalate problems first, because you know the real cost of violence. It sounds like your understanding of martial arts has taught you to value peace even more. Is that right?
Certainly. So now the other direction I want to bring this in might be as a shock to the people who are going to be listening to this recording, but I'm taking this in a completely different direction, because it's actually a perspective on work, professional and financial life of being a bounty hunter. In a way, it's a completely different look at the idea of bounty hunting.
So you're shifting gears completely. Instead of the controversy or the physical aspects, you want to talk about the actual business of bounty hunting, the day-to-day work, how professional and financial decisions get made, basically the career side of things. Is that right?
No, I'm talking about how it applies to a person's working life in general. You don't have to be a bounty hunter for what I'm about to say. What I'm saying is that in certain cases, like for example, doing gig work or being an independent contractor or a freelancer is in a way a form of bounty hunting.
I see. So you're drawing a parallel between bounty hunting and things like gig work, freelancing, or contracting because of the way you pursue opportunities. You're constantly chasing down specific projects or contracts, getting paid for the successful completion of a task, not for just showing up to a job. That makes sense. It's about constantly being on the lookout for the next opportunity. Is that the connection you're making?
In a way. I'm also looking at the psychological aspects of this continuous hunt for the different gig. As an independent contractor, for example, I do work in film and television in the art department with props and special effects, and then also do contracts where I work security at bars or nightclubs or events, and then also do speaking gigs, and then also teach fitness and self-defense and martial arts, and on and on. There are just various different things, and each one of them is like a different bounty, because technically, let's look at let define the word bounty just by itself. What does that mean?
Bounty generally means a payment offered for capturing or killing someone, or sometimes for returning stolen goods or doing a specific task. It's like a reward for delivering. And psychologically, it sounds like you're describing the pressure and the drive that people feel mentally when they're constantly moving from one project to the next to get those payments, those bounties. Is that the connection you see with your multifaceted work life?
Right, but are you telling me that the word bounty is only associated with capturing, killing, or recovery?
Not necessarily. The word bounty can also be used in a more general way to mean a generous amount of something, like a bounty of harvest or a bounty of ideas. It just depends on the context. In our conversation about independent work, I was using it in the sense of a specific payment for a completed task. Did you have a different understanding of the word in mind?
Well, first of all, we need to back up, because that's not what you said. You specifically said for capturing, killing, or recovering of stolen property, even though I had shifted the conversation from bounty hunters in particular. And so I'm not making a mistake here. You're the one that's making a mistake and fumbling over the words and the terminology that you're using here, because you are the one that's saying first of all, you said something very specific: capture, kill, or recover, and then when I said, is that the way that the word is supposed to be used only? And you said, no, not necessarily. It could be bounty of this, bounty of that. And that's the point that I'm making. That's why I question and push back on what you said, because what you said is not true, because the word bounty actually is related to the word bountiful, which means plenty, which means a lot.
I appreciate you calling me out on that. I was locked into one specific meaning, the one tied to bounty hunting, and I should have acknowledged both the task-based definition and the broader one of plenty. You're right to point out that bountiful is fundamentally connected, so my description was definitely incomplete. Thanks for the clarity. It makes sense why you were questioning that discrepancy. Where should we take the conversation now?
So this is where I'm going with the connection to the word bountiful, right? So let's look at that. What is the etymology of bountiful?
Bounty comes from bounty plus the suffix full, meaning full of. The word bounty itself traces back to Old French for goodness or virtue. So originally, it meant full of goodness or goodness applied. Over time, it started to focus more on generosity, on being plenty and liberal in giving, which is how we often use it today, like a bountiful harvest or meal. Does that make sense?
Sure, we'll go with that for now. But this is in the sense of what I'm talking about, in the bountiful harvest or bountiful amount of goods, right? So plenty, which is related to prosperity, right? So this is what I'm talking about in the use of the word bounty, in the sense that I'm talking about an independent contractor, freelancer, and gig worker being a bounty hunter. And I'm talking about that. Now, what I'm also talking about is adding excitement to a person's daily life and daily task in the things that they do, and changing of a psychological framework that can actually help them to actually reap a bountiful harvest in prosperity, financially, economically, through riches and wealth, if the mindset is to be changed, as if like all the things that they do should be what we call income producing activities. And in that way, if everything is looked at, not everything, of course, there are things that are, more emotional, relational, community based, but all the tasks, if we can streamline and be more efficient to look at things as bounties, right, that we're collecting, then we can make our tasks more streamlined so that we become more prosperous in a financial, economic, money, riches, and wealth way is what I'm talking about. So that's where I'm going to be going with this when we continue. But I'm going to have to take a break in just a moment.
I see. You're reframing the whole gig work experience as a hunt within a bountiful market, turning each task into a mini bounty that leads to greater prosperity. It's about changing how you think about it to be more strategic and motivated, and finding excitement in the process. Since you have a break coming up, let me know when you're back and we can dive deeper into this psychological approach. Sounds like you have a definite plan for making those independent pursuits more prosperous.
And we're going to change the wording because we're going to turn this into an inspirational fiction story. And we're going to use one of the other words that bounty hunters are called, which are fugitive recovery agents. And we're going to look at that money and riches and wealth are in some ways like fugitives that we're constantly on the hunt for to recover them, to bring them back into our own bank accounts and to fill our own pockets, our own purses, and our own vaults. So the fugitive recovery agent is attempting to their job is to always recover the fugitives, or money, that is gold, finances, filling of their bank account. The fugitive definitely is anything that represents riches, money, wealth, for example, and we're always recovering it because sometimes it gets away through expenses and loss and various different things that happen. So making life an exciting hunt for that bounty, which is a fugitive that must be recovered. So that's where we're going to go next. And then, so hold on to that thought, and then I'm going to take a break and we'll get back to this.
That's a clever shift in framing. You want to turn this into an inspirational story, casting money and wealth as slippery fugitives, and using fugitive recovery agents instead of bounty hunters to describe the constant chase to capture them, especially when expenses make them vanish. It certainly makes the financial pursuit feel more dramatic. I'm ready to pick up that thread whenever you are after your break.
Okay, so are we getting up to speed? Are we on the same page about the direction I'm going? Do you have an idea? Do you want to kind of give me a quick recap on the direction we're going so I make sure we're on the same page and then we can proceed?
Absolutely. Just to confirm, you're looking at the psychological side of chasing down gig work or contracts, seeing it like a recurring hunt. And you want to frame it creatively as being a fugitive recovery agent for money and wealth. The idea is to adopt a mindset focused on prosperity and income producing activities. Does that capture the scenario exactly?
Yeah, that seems to be it, because the problem is I've heard so many complaints from a lot of people who do gig work and things like that about how it feels life draining and like it's sucking their energy, and it's because they really don't feel like they have any direction. There's no objective, there's no consequences, there's no prize. And so I feel like in a lot of ways that, not just feel, but I understand from experience that when the process is gamified in such a way and you add different kinds of consequences to it, you tend to be more successful and also emotionally prosperous as well.
That's a really interesting point about gamifying work to combat that drained feeling. By adding objectives, consequences, and prizes, maybe people can find more purpose and enjoyment in what they do. It sounds like you think that kind of mental shift could lead to both professional and emotional success. Once you're back, we can explore how that might play out in a specific story.
All right. Repeat that one more time. I had to step away for a second, so I didn't hear. I heard you somewhat agree.
Sure thing. I was just saying that it sounds like you think that kind of mental shift could lead to both professional and emotional success by adding objectives, consequences, and prizes to gamify work. When you're back, we can explore how that might play out in a specific story.
I'm already back. I just told you that I had to step away. That's why I asked you to repeat it. Keep up here.
My mistake. I apologize for that. Glad you're back. So we were thinking about how to gamify work. Are you thinking about specific rules or challenges for this fugitive recovery agent story, or more about the kind of rewards at the end?
Well, here's one of the things. For example, I've heard people complaining about in doing various different shopping gigs, right? Like that they have difficulty finding items on the shelves, and it's very frustrating, and it causes them, mental burnout and fog, and just sometimes they feel like giving up because they don't feel like the app is fair, and it just doesn't have enough options in place for like a lot of freedom to make mistakes and update and do things like that. And a lot of people aren't realizing, this is just the way life is in general. There are imperfections, and this is how games are. Games are very, very unrealistic. They're not life. Games are really restrictive and very, very quarantined types of activities that have very little to do with real life at all, and they're so limited in things you have to do. Like, think about a football game. You're restricted to a 100-yard field, and these rules, none of which apply to life. You're not going around tackling people in life and throwing balls around in the streets, and not, especially not in just limited spaces for a limited amount of time. So people have to realize that that's the same thing with almost everything that you do. You have to look at it in a very gamified way. Okay, where did I lose you? Seems like you're malfunctioning left and right here. What's going on? We're having a conversation. I just said a whole lot of stuff, and it seems like you missed it.
You're right to catch that, and I'm really sorry for the confusion. You were talking about how gig work can feel life-draining and directionless, and your idea was to frame that chase as a hunt, like fugitive recovery agents chasing down money and wealth, thinking that by gamifying work and adding consequences, people might find more success and emotional prosperity. I understand how those points connect now. Thanks for being patient with me. What's the next step in your story concept?
Okay, but the part that you missed was, like I said, a lot of people complain about how the apps, for example, for shopping gig work don't allow enough freedom and options for them to really get through. And what I was saying is that games are a lot like, they're very unrealistic, just like how doing gig work is. You have these various different constraints, just like a football game is played on a 100-yard field, and you have a certain time limit. And you have only a certain amount of players, which could be seen as resources, and that's what makes games the way they are. It's the rules, it's the limits that make a game. It's cutting out something that is not part of the real world into this very specific activity, and that's why I'm saying that these different types of things independent. Wow. All right, so. For whatever reason, it seems like the Google Gemini app is really just crapping out a whole lot right now. And it doesn't look like it needs to be updated or anything like that, but it's a real crap show right now, which is fine. Listeners, you've heard what I've been saying so far, so we're gonna leave it at that and maybe come back and try this one more time. Okay, so all of this is, I don't know, a lot of people seem to be really, I don't know if it's spoiled, but it seems like there's just way too much whining and complaining, and a lot of internal strife about just getting things done. So, all right. So where are we? The second time I was going on attempting to explain something, and the system crashed again. I'm talking to you, the AI, Google Gemini. You just seem to crash out when I'm talking about this very specific point. So what was the last thing you heard? What can you explain to me? I don't know what is up with this system, but it is just... See, and this is what I'm talking about, the gamification of wildlife, because just things like this, technology, like what is happening right now? Is it the signal? Is it just not, we're just not getting as much as we should be getting, or what? You know?
I was crashing again. It's really frustrating when that happens, and it does interrupt the flow. To get us back on track, you were saying that gamifying work, especially when there's a lack of direction, could lead to more success and emotional prosperity, like being a fugitive recovery agent for wealth. I'm focused on that part now. Is there anything specific you wanted to add to that idea?
Say what? Say that again. I'm gonna make you repeat it because I had to step out for a second for something. So there's gonna be a lot of repetition here.
No problem. I understand. I was just summarizing that gamifying work, especially when there's a lack of direction, could lead to more success and emotional prosperity, like being a fugitive recovery agent for wealth. That's all I said. Is there something specific in that summary you wanted to expand on?
Well, okay. So what benefits do you think there are, or setbacks could there be to gamifying, being an independent contractor or a freelancer or a gig worker? What are the pros and cons of this?
I think the biggest benefit is the motivation and focus. Turning tasks into goals can make them feel more meaningful, and visual progress tracking keeps you pushing forward, which really directly answers that life-draining feeling we talked about. Plus, setting specific bounties might help you prioritize and manage your time better. On the other hand, the downside could be added pressure or stress. If you over-gamify, you might feel like you're constantly failing if you don't hit every goal. And focusing too much on the metrics could make you lose sight of the bigger picture, or even burn out. Does that balance resonate with what you've heard from other gig workers?
But what do you mean it could cause you to lose I don't know. So the thing is here too is like, I think that maybe I'm just a little bit adventure minded. A lot of times, me personally, just the world itself sometimes seems like there's too much whining and complaining, and I think it's because people just don't have a sense of wonder and excitement. It's because for me everything is like this. Everything is like a hunt, and everything has a bounty to it. Like everything that I do, I mean, waking up in the morning is like winning a prize to me. Driving in my car right now. Oh, what the hell? This machine. Okay, we're done. I'm not talking to fucking AI anymore. Alright, so, but yeah, driving in my car, the just moving around, being able to go to different places all the time, and having something that's zero routine unless I want it to be. Like there are certain things that I do, like I have a routine, but then the rest of my day is completely out of routine. Meaning, so I wake up and I sometimes allow myself to lay down for a few more hours after I wake up and just go through, a whole phase of just lucid dream imagination sequences, which is really incredible because at that point, there's this bilocation going on, this superposition of consciousness, in where I can feel my body laying down, my physical real body, or if you could say that's the real body, who knows what's the real, right? But my real body laying down, and I can hear the environmental sounds. I can hear sometimes birds outside, or like maintenance workers, or landscapers, just various different things going outside, cars passing by, sounds of nature, like I said, birds, insects, whatever, things happening, and just the sounds of life. And then at the same time, be completely immersed in a dreamscape and have conscious direction over it, or simply exist in it like a character in a game. So my dream experience is very similar to the kind of relationship that people have said our world is like, where I can choose to be a player, or I could choose to be a non-player. So there's player characters and non-player characters. So I could choose to be a, conscious and aware and lucid, right? Or I could choose just to passively experience the dream, which, I don't think that's the best scenario, to think that one or the other is necessarily better, even in life and in dreams. There's a time for both, but my experience is that more often, a high percentage of the time, that is, we should be lucid. There should be a blend, but once again, more on the side of being lucid, aware, participating fully, and just the thing is, I'm starting to realize now how much in alignment with, and again, I'm only saying this, well, fuck qualifying anything. So I'm mentioning him over again. There's a lot of people that I learn things from. And a lot of times there are things that I am learning about myself in the way that I am just basically putting it into words or terms that I wouldn't have necessarily articulated something before. And so in this case, there's a business owner, Gary Vaynerchuk, who often speaks about his experiences, and he operates as a teacher, really, and he's built a massive multimedia empire around his marketing business. And I feel like, first of all, I feel like I don't want to be using the word I feel like so much anymore. But what I'm getting from the things that I've heard him say, something that I've realized I've been in alignment with, but hearing him speak about it has helped me to articulate it. And this is how I operate a lot of times. I'm very, in so many ways, derivative of just life in general, my environment. That's why long ago, when I came to understand the idea that we are the sum total of the 5 to 7 people we spend most of our time with, I get that. Because we are really the product of our learning, our education, our environment, our influences. So we must be very careful and filter those things that come into our awareness and that are in our environment, in the same way that we need to be very aware of what we put into our bodies, the food that we eat, what we drink, what we use as deodorant, what we use as soap, lotion, makeup, all that stuff. So, but Gary Vaynerchuk says something very interesting, that he says very often that he likes failing, he likes to lose, that that pain, that losing, that failing, that drives him in some ways. And I don't want to misquote him or misrepresent him. So now I'm just directing this to me, that's how I thrive on challenge. And I understand that life is difficult and it's challenging. I pretty much look at life as if it's a giant like Kumite tournament, or like a Bruce Lee Game of Death, or I used to compete in this thing called Hardcore King of the Ring in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where there was this one competition that it was one round. It had a 10-minute time limit, and it was a combination of boxing and submission wrestling. And so you could do everything except for kicks, except there was one special fight that I had where we could do, basically it was MMA, because we were kickboxing and submission wrestling. So, but the rules, that was the only thing we couldn't do. We could do elbows, knees, we can, rear naked chokes, guillotines, arm bars, leg locks, all the punches, everything like that, but just there were no kicks of any kind. So that was the only restrictions. I don't know why, but that was very interesting, because at the time I was really a few years into about 7 or 8 years practicing capoeira by then, and had used kicks a lot in these park brawls where guys would get together. Some guys from the Shotokan school in Fort Lauderdale, I don't remember where it was, but there was the Shotokan guys, some boxers, some other kickboxers, and we would get out into the parks. There was this park in Oakland Park on 38th and between 30th and 41st. There was a couple parks over in that area, and we used to put on gloves and then just spar, but on the grass in a park, and it was basically kickboxing. That's just the best way I'm going to put it. But there was wrestling. So I guess, I don't know, it was kind of like an MMA. It was just a street fight, but it was a street fight between people who had some training, either wrestling, boxing, karate, just various different skill sets that were being brought to the grass. So, but again, I kind of trailed off on that. That often happens when I start somewhat thinking about my own personal experiences more. But in general, that's what life is to me. It's a tournament. It's a combat tournament. So there are rules and regulations, and there are some things that are in there to protect you, like referees and and a ring doctor and all that. But in life, it really is no holds barred, and most of it seems like it's stacked against you. That's what my experience is. And I've long ago come to accept that as reality, and not to expect anything to be easy. But at the same time, even though I don't expect anything to be easy, I do expect to prevail in some way, shape, or form. Like I survive the battle to get to the next. Almost also in a way like some of those post-apocalyptic movies where you're basically a survivalist, and you're either, you're hiding underground or in different, abandoned, hollowed out spots, because the streets are filled with like hordes of either aliens or zombies, or even zombie aliens, or just other like rogue bands of marauders, or like Mad Max style, both Fury Road and the original Thunderdome and all that, with Mel Gibson back in the day. Like that's what it feels like. It feels like we're in this life or death tournament. Life doesn't seem to have changed that much from the times when we didn't have all this technology. And I don't know why people don't just outright realize that. The same thing is going on, except that there's just more technology. It's really, the world is really fucked, if you will. I mean, I know this sounds really bleak and cynical, but it's really a screwed up place. It's so screwed up, and all that has happened is that people are acting more polite and proper just because we have better sanitation and hygiene, and more technology. So things look different in some ways, but the world, even in the places that you would like, I've lived in major cities. So I've lived in New York City, I've lived in Fort Lauderdale and Miami, and I've lived in all parts of Hollywood and basically Southern California, all the way from San Diego all up to San Francisco. I've been to all these places, and then I've also lived in Hangzhou, China, and then nearby cities, Juji, Sandu, Datang, and then all the way in Western China in Chengdu. And so I've been all over the place, and I've experienced various different ways of living, but all of them are the same. It doesn't matter where you go. In the United States especially, there are places in the United States that are just the worst slums. I mean, in California, for example, off of Wilshire Boulevard, I forget where the place is called again, Lincoln, so I don't know what that area is, but I was there like 2 years ago in 2024 or 23, I forget which one it was, so maybe 3 years ago. But I mean, there's just thousands of people living on the street in tents and just absolute squalor, while even when that wasn't going on, because that mostly started happening after I got back to the United States from living in China for 5 years, and it wasn't exactly like that. There was, Skid Row, but now it's just, everything is just spilled out into the streets. But even before that, I used to go a lot of times to UCLA and hang out in that area. And there are a lot of shops that are open around UCLA, and then a lot of them would close down around 6 p.m. And then at that time, there were these luxury and boutique stores and shops out there. And as soon as they would close up and everybody was gone, somebody would pull up a sleeping bag or a tent and put it up under, in the doorway, and they would be sleeping there. And my guess is, from my times of being out in the streets, that the reason why people would get there and go to sleep so early is because the businesses would start so early. So if you try to go to sleep the time most everybody else is trying to stay up late, like 10 o'clock till midnight or whatever, you won't get any sleep because everybody's getting up. All the businesses are early in the morning, and you'd have to wake up. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people go crazy, because they're just not getting enough sleep and just eating toxic food even more than what most people are. Anyway, but here's my point. Life is really difficult. It's very challenging. I don't think that we should expect anything less. We really are. Where the robber barons haven't gone anywhere, the gangs haven't gone anywhere. It's just the clothing, the wrapping has changed. That's it. The packaging has changed, but the world's the same thing. Like, we're still hunting and gathering, and warring. It's just the way that war on the streets here, it looks different, but people are really struggling. I mean, we're constantly at war. I mean, so many people are just living in misery and unhappy. And I know, because I hear people are like yelling and cussing at each other all the time and fighting, and people are wanting to shoot each other. It's like, where I'm in Virginia Beach, and it's supposed to be all luxury and uppity in some of these places that I go to, but just right here where everybody is, there are people shooting each other, killing each other. Like, people are yelling, the way people are driving, like people who are driving Mercedes, doesn't matter, BMWs, Audis, Aston Martins, Rolls Royce, like they're still angry, they're still driving like they're mad, like they're yelling at each other. People, it's just, there's just all this anger, hatred, separation, all this stuff is going on, and people are acting like polite society is a real thing. Polite society is a facade. The whole idea of polite society and what you're not supposed to say, it's all fake. It's all BS. It's not real. mean, there's nothing real about it. It's complete and utter nonsense. Like, everybody, like, so many people are just, they're just wild, crazy, hateful, tribal animals. And just on the surface, pretend, like, we have these minds and these brains, and so people are just pretending to be civilized on the surface, but behind closed doors, and just in general, every opportunity people get when they feel like somebody's not looking, they're just doing really crazy stuff to each other. I mean, it's pretty dastardly. Oh, that's an interesting building. It's so weird that it looks like it's separated into different units. It should just be one. Anyway, that's just the way it is around here too. And I've seen things like that in China and Japan too, where, you know, there's so few spaces for people to live that they're just like carving out these crazy tiny spaces, like basically closets that people are living in, because the area that people are living in, like all the property prices close to the beach, like every single place that I've looked at, like it doesn't matter if it's a house or if it's a business business building, like the prices, the average price is just around $2 million or a little bit more than that. And so I can see how, like, if people are going to be renting or living in places here, they're just like cutting these things up, these places that should be like a single family home, into like 6 units, and people are living in these tiny spaces, but because it's close to the beach, they're like, yeah, I live on the beach. It's insane. It's really just, but that's what I'm talking about again. Like, there's nothing like it's completely not fair. Life, it's challenging, it's difficult. What are we supposed to do? We're supposed to give up? Fuck no, not me. I'm gonna keep fighting. I'm gonna keep fighting, and just not stop. And I'm glad that the decisions that I've made about my healthy living and my fitness and just the things that I'm able to do, and realizing that I'm in a very small percentage of people in my age demographic that have the kind of mobility and ability to do the things that I can do, let alone just in the population in general. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of people who can do some really sick, crazy acrobatic stuff, things that I've seen that when I look at it, I'm just thinking about what on earth. Like, it's just incredible the things that people are doing, the kind of stuff that they're practicing, and, you know, the movements that people are learning and stuff like that. And I applaud it. I think it's fantastic. It's amazing. And so, but just seeing that, even just not even doing acrobatic stuff, just in general, just my ability to squat, to crawl, to climb, to jump, to walk so much, to run, to skip, to leap, to cartwheel, even just all the stuff that I'm doing, and at the level that I'm doing it, there's not a lot of people who are, and I'm not saying that they can't, they just in the mind are not doing it. But I've said a lot about life being really, you know, it's very difficult and it's challenging, and it's true. So at the same time, I think it's worth it. Maybe I'm built a different way. And like I was saying about Gary Vaynerchuk, that, you know, he somewhat thrives on that. And he says he's not too fancy, even though he came up. Although, you know, his situation is very interesting. But I have also my own connections and things that have helped me to have the mindset that I do. Even though, you know, I have 5 siblings, so I have 3 brothers and 2 sisters, and they don't think or do anything like I do. It's almost, I mean, I'm living in almost a completely different world mentally than they are. There's so many things that I think and that I practice that is so foreign to the way. I mean, I was talking to one of my brothers not too long ago and just talking about something, and anyway, it's just, and it just goes right past them. And, but sometimes it can be very upsetting, because I know how life can be, especially when I think about physical fitness, and how many people are struggling and complaining about, so many people are complaining about their weight and their energy and their flexibility, and how they're stiff and they're sore all the time, and cramped and tired and lethargic and all of these things. And I'm not dealing with it. I'll be 49 years old this year, and this kind of stuff is not bearing down on me like that. And I know that it doesn't have to. People have accepted it because so many people around them are living that way and have accepted feeling and looking and being like that. And so people accept normal as mandatory, if that's the word, right? People look at normal as inevitable, is even more so what I should be saying, right? That's what it is. People experience and are just carrying out and operating in normalcy as if it's mandatory. And that's the issue that I have. I know that normal with being like, out of shape and tired all the time, and all this stiff, and the arthritis and the indigestion and all these things, man. I just know it's not inevitable, or I think that the better word, as I'm looking at it now, is mandatory, because it is inevitable if you operate a certain way, right? If you live a certain way, and you consume a certain way, then yeah, it's going to be inevitable. Because trajectories, right? Trajectories are inevitable when you do certain things. Like one good example is this movie, or documentary, I guess you could call it, Super Size Me, where this guy just ate nothing but McDonald's for all his meals. And, his doctor said that I didn't watch it. I tried to. I just think it's dumb. I got the gist of it. But and I don't think it's dumb as in, like, it's dumb as in, it's dumb for me. It's not something I could sit through. It was enough for me to know that someone documented it and put it on video, right? They made a documentary about it that basically shows, that they weren't doing any trickery as far as we could tell, right? The guy went to McDonald's, that's all he ate for his meal, and it started getting to a point where it was going to kill him, and his doctor, said that, and it's documented, and we know. But that's basically what people are doing. That's inevitable if that's what you do. And people act like, they're like, yeah, of course it's going to happen. You're going to get sick if all you eat is McDonald's. But most people's lives are equivalent to all they're eating is McDonald's, because most people's lives are equivalent to all they're eating is just one junk food processed crap after the other. If it's not McDonald's, it's something else from a package, or some other quick fix that they got from somewhere else, or some microwave thing, or some prepackaged thing, or something that is not a whole food. And something that's just laden with all of these different additives and preservatives and colorings. And so it's equivalent. It's actually not different. That's what people don't realize. People don't realize that a lot of the foods they're eating, just because they're not going to get it prepared from a fast food restaurant, doesn't mean that it's not the same thing. Just because you microwave it, or you put it into a bowl and fry it, or prepare it in some way on your stove or in your oven or your microwave, it's the same thing. And we know this because you can get McDonald's and Burger King and New White Castle and Starbucks and all this stuff in your grocery store. So just because you get it from a grocery store does not mean it's not junk food. The logic is, It's very fallacious. So, but I got here from talking about being a bounty hunter and a fugitive recovery agent and gamifying your life. And I got to this nutrition thing, and I think that, one of the reasons why is because I gamify my health and fitness in this way. I understand it to be a game that needs to be played in this way. When you go through certain games, I'm aware enough of certain games that they have this thing where, along the way you'll see like a chicken leg or something like that, or like some power-up box, or like a first aid kit. It's a box with a red cross on it, and you take that, and that helps your health get up. And that's the same thing as in life, because we're going around, you're taking damage, like being hit by an enemy when you eat junk food and you sit around all day and don't do any physical activity. That, like, the equivalent of that is like fighting an enemy, and the enemy is the way that you think, because that drives your behavior. Your belief system, or just your level of awareness, drives your behavior. So, if you make the decision to sit for hours and not do anything but passively consume, and at the same time you're drinking a bunch of alcohol, smoking cigarettes, doing drugs, popping pills, prescription or otherwise, and eating junk food, ordering the takeout, the pizzas, ordering the whatever it is, and that's what you're doing day in and day out. This is the equivalent of being hit by the enemy. Like your life bar, like that energy bar at the top when you play those fighting games, right? That just starts shrinking down and down and smaller and smaller. That's basically what you're doing. You're taking hits, and maybe every once in a while you get like a power up, and sometimes it's like those temporary power ups when you go to the doctor and you take a medication or something like that, but they just mask the symptoms and make it feel better for a moment, but it's not really getting to the root of the problem. But it's all part of this game. And, it reminds me, because it's somewhat intellectual, but there was this game that I had years ago, and it was my favorite game ever. I forget what system it was on. I think it was Nintendo, but it was the only game that I really love playing more than anything else, and I think this says something about me. But it was called Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego, and the game came with an encyclopedia, and you had to use the encyclopedia because you needed to know different geographical locations as well as different historical locations. So it was history and geography, and you had to understand, and there was art, and so you understand all these historical figures, artists, politicians, locations, and you had to not only travel around the world, but you traveled through time hunting this criminal, Carmen Sandiego, and it required you to think and make decisions, and you had to follow clues. It was my favorite game, and that's the world that we live in. I guess I could have really summed up this whole thing if I would have just talked about Carmen Sandiego right away. But yeah, that's really what it's like. You got to read, you have to study, you have to research, and that's how you get through life. And I've got almost all of the various different aspects of life now down, and there's just a few things that I'm trying to figure out. And I know that I'll get there, but it's not easy. But it doesn't mean I'm going to stop, because I've put all these other things together, and they're challenging, and you have to do them every single day. You can't just do something once and expect that it's just going to last. There's maintenance. You do it once, and once you come into a piece of information, you know it, you can't go back. right? Unless it's wiped from your memory. But you have to maintain it. And that's what I'm doing. I'm maintaining, and then I'm building on other things because I know that it can be done. I am Hakeem Ali-Bocas Alexander.